Hi all, I have an interesting game of Fabiano Caruana playing white against Yangyi. This was played in the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz tournament of 2019, and I think it's fairly topical to explore the variation of the Sicilian defence we're looking at the moment, the four knights variation, in particular what makes it kind of distinctive, not just as a tool to get a certain type of Sicilian Sveshnikov move order, but as a kind of new Sicilian toy or weapon in its own right. So let's have a look at this game. So Fabiano kicked off with e4. Yangyi played c5. Knight f3, we have e6. d4, c takes, knight f6, knight c3. So the four horsemen are out, or the four knights. We have knight c6, knight db5, and now Kasparov, for example, would routinely play d6, and it would lead to a Sicilian Sveshnikov. For example, d6, bishop f4, e5, bishop g5. We're in Sicilian Sveshnikov territory, which is one of my favourite openings actually with black, and has recently had a great resurgence because of Magnus Carlsen playing the Sicilian Sveshnikov. So here anyway, we see, is there an independent value to this opening with bishop b4, this kind of Sicilian pin variation hybrid, so pinning that knight. We have a3. This is one of the more common moves, just grabbing the dark square bishop. And is that the end of the story? Is this the reason why maybe it doesn't inspire too many players with the black pieces to give up the bishop? Now here, it's important to play d5 because sometimes queen d6 is going to be a pain. So d5, we have bishop d3, both sides now castle. And now you do get to play d4, knight e2, and now e5. This opens up the light square bishop, which can be useful to kind of pin the knight in an annoying way, trying to tempt weaknesses. But also, there's a certain risk element here in the position. Surely white can play f4 at some point and try and open up the bishop. Or does black grab the e5 square? So it's very interesting, the play potentially. We have knight g3. Now here, a very high level stem game. Maybe black didn't play the most accurate move here. Black played knight e7 in the game Dubov against Tregubov. That was in Sochi 2015. And in fact, white got in f4. And it does seem kind of dangerous for black, with white having the bishop pair, especially the dark square bishop without a counterpart. This is actually... It turned out to be very dangerous. I'll briefly just show you this game. It shows that it's kind of scary. The king was kind of attacked, and white got a very strong position here attacking the king side, especially f6. And white went on to win with crashing through. It not a great advert for the system for sure, but it shows. Yeah, the dangers of giving white the dark square bishop are evident. And white won here after king g3. So it's interesting, if we look at this position, one has to be very, very careful here. Knight e7 maybe is not the best try. We have, in this particular game, Yangyi actually plays knight d7. So this betrays the idea that maybe actually knight c5 will be useful, trying to grab the light square bishop or pivot back here to control the f4 square. And Caruana reacted to this move with b4. If, for example, b3, then knight c5, and then taking the light square bishop, this should be okay for black. So b4 seems to preserve the bishop pair. It seems fairly logical. Also, white might want to later play b5 and maybe even use this diagonal at some point, either from a3 or b4. It seems a good idea to try and decentralize the knights. We have knight e7 now and a4, knight g6. We have a5 being played in this position. So a5. And it looks as though this seems quite comfortable for white at this moment. One thing we know from neural networks, when giving up a bishop of a certain colour, it's been emphasised to me at least that often it's the other colour of the bishop. So here it would be the light squares there are often interesting pressure points to celebrate. And watch out for black's play here on the light squares in particular. We have rook e8, c3. Now black plays knight f6, not tempted to take that pawn. If d takes, then bishop b5 is fairly annoying. For example, queen e7, bishop e3, and white is getting quite a big position here, winning material. For example, queen a4 gets white material, protecting the queen, getting out of that pin. So it is kind of dangerous, this position. And if knight d f8, just winning the exchange there. So it's a pretty dangerous position to accept that pawn. So it seems a wise thing to play knight f6. Bishop b2. We have bishop g4. So this nuisance move, f3, causes some weaknesses. On queen c2, rook c8 seems a fairly sensible idea here. And after f3, this should be fine for black, this position. So f3 seems a natural idea, a move. We have d takes here, bishop takes, rook c8. Now bishop b2 was played. Perhaps stronger, actually, was f takes g4, which looks as though the pawns are a bit, ugly, not so nice, but functionally it's got perks after bishop b5 hitting the rook. And if white gets, it seems an advantageous endgame if he had played like this. For example, like this is winning material, further transitioning the position, this resource, to a sort of position which is very, very uncomfortable for black indeed. So I think that was white's strongest path, guaranteeing a solid advantage. But white actually played bishop b2, maybe not wanting to have doubled pawns. And we have bishop d7, knight e2, and now queen e7, bishop a3, rook e d8, b5. So hitting the queen moves to e6, queen b1. And now this is a really interesting kind of form pawn strategy here, and light squares. We've got the light square bishop, and the knights might be able to grip either light squares or dark squares. So it seems as though this structure, it seems very, very logical to try and undermine on the light squares. And we see this key move h5 to kind of form pawn attack, but also light square campaign. Remember though, black's given up the dark square bishop voluntarily, and we often see on the other colour things light up. So will the light squares be under pressure? We have rook d1, h4, and now queen b2. Caruana seems hesitant to play h3. Perhaps in view of knight h5, this seems rather comfortable for black. This position should be at least equal. So queen b2, inviting the potentially dreaded form pawn, knight h7, rook ac1, knight g5. So really putting force behind the potential h3. We have rook takes, bishop takes, queen c1, hitting the knight. That now is protected with queen f6, bishop c4. Here, if queen e3, maybe this is a safer move, it seems, to safeguard f3 in some cases. And if knight e6, bishop c1, this should be okay, for example, this position. So it would have a good point to it to sort of set up potential battery on g5. But bishop c4, and now it seems black gets into the driving seat here with this battering form pawn move, h3. And yes, there's no guarantee you'll get this sort of counter attack in your own games. It's a very high level blitz game though. It's a 5-minute 3-second increment. So it seems Caruana's played it in a disastrous way for sure. But there's potential on the light squares. There's potential. Rook takes, queen takes, bishop c5. It does seem as though this is dreadful now. After g takes, for example, knight h4 and taking on h3, not only fragmenting the pawns, king safety is being eroded, black's getting a big advantage. So bishop c5, h takes g2, king takes, check, and it's a king hunt almost now after queen f6. This is just very vicious. Although white's got the bishop pair, the king is being blasted here to smithereens after queen f6. In fact, knight h takes f3 is also strong. For example, this is mostly harmless. Again, queen f6. So queen f6, king e1, knight h takes f3, and now e4 drops. Yes, so you can say that the light squares have been disintegrated to some extent in white's position. Bishop takes a7, bishop f5, queen e3. It's also pointless to play a6 here after the check. This check, discovered check, and check. And this is just really horrendous for white. So yes, it's pretty horrendous anyway. So queen e3, we have check, king c1, queen b4, bishop b3, queen a3, and now queen takes a5. So yes, the queen dare not take on f3 because of queen d2, checkmate. And we have knight g3, knight c3 check, and the game ended here. The king's only got one square to go to, and it will be checkmate if king c1, queen a3 is checkmate. So, okay, this makes a change from the high-level engine games for sure, and I will try and get some, with the help of Decap, some high-level engine games in this kind of hidden variation of the Sicilian. It does fascinate me, generally, the variation. Even just as a transpositional tool, even if you do want to play d6. But this whole new toy in its own right, bishop b4, I'm hoping to draw your attention to it as maybe a point of experimenting here in this line. So the usual move, as I say, Kasparov used to play d6, and we're experimenting here with bishop b4. So is it a viable system in its own right? You can't really take the Caruana Blitz game as huge evidence, of course. So we will see, try and see more high-level games at longer time control or engine games in this particular variation. Kind of fascinating and unique in its own right. So if you want to study the Sicilian full nights, there's actually now a free course, absolutely free, short and sweet. Some cool lines have been selected. So that's at Kingscrusher TV /Sicilian full nights -free. So you might want to try it out and experiment in your own games. It's really kind of a novel weapon, especially in Blitz, that many people might not have seen this at all, this particular position with the white pieces, because if, like Kasparov fans like me, you would just be playing perhaps d6 routinely instead of trying to pin the knight here. So a fascinating pin idea is being emphasized here. Okay, thanks very much.